Today on Leadr, episode 24, I am joined by a friend and former colleague, Hasan Ertas. He's the founder and CEO of Exin Health AI. They're the makers of OR Genie. It's an AI co-pilot for OR documentation. I think you're going to like this one. Let's get into the episode. I am super excited to announce a friend and former colleague of mine, Hasan Ertas, to Leadr Podcast. So Hasan, welcome to Leadr Podcast.
Thank you, Stephanie. Pleasure to be here.
Of course. So good to see you. Tell me what is going on. So I know when we spoke, we were talking about, you had just left and you had started a company. So I definitely want to talk about that. But before we get into that, let's talk about how we know each other for everyone that's listening. So obviously we both worked at Intuitive, right? I think
That's right.
First time that I interacted with you was possibly in your colorectal role. And I was the sales manager in Orange County. And I remember you were assigned, you may not remember this, but this is my first memory of you. You were assigned to one of my accounts, which is UCI, which was fun.
Absolutely.
It's a fun account. Anyway, so I know you worked very closely with Dr. Bugazzi and a few others, and that's my memory of our first interaction. And then obviously, we worked. How long did you work at Intuitive? How long was it?
About 14 years.
14 years. So you have two on me. Yeah. So I left at the 12-year mark. You left at 14, but that's how Hasan and I know each other. And we also know each other because we've run into each other at a couple of entrepreneur meetings that both of us have attended. Both of us work in the medical device space still. And we've just kept in contact. And so that's kind of what happens when you become an entrepreneur. Your network gets really big and much bigger than when you work for a company and you have a four-walled environment of a network. And kind of just within that insulated circle of your company. But now you tell me, Hasan, if it feels this way. I feel like I know so many different people and diverse people and, multiple countries now that I have clients in and even contacts, people I didn't know before, like Steve Bell and others that, just through LinkedIn and just through these conversations, I've just met really, really cool people. So what's been your experience after leaving corporate and starting, which we'll get into, Exin Health?
Absolutely. No, that's a great question. I completely agree with you. I think as we get into kind of our late 40s, 50s, and 60s, what we really bring with us is experience in the network. And you have a wonderful memory. I think you remember more of our interactions than I perhaps do. But I have one.
You made more of an impression on me than I made on you, is what you're saying.
No, I have no. I have one the top of my memory list with you is it was a meeting in Orange County. It was a regional meeting, directors and sales managers. And I think I was at the corporate marketing role at the time. And we wanted to roll out a new software to capture our customer interactions, these peer-to-peer events. And we built the software and we brought it to your meeting for the first time. And we were looking for leaders who would be willing to try this new software. It was new, different, unknown. And you were the first one to raise your hand and you said, hey, you and your reps will be willing to try it. And it was just a wonderful beginning. From there on, it took like a wildfire. We integrated all of your guys' feedback. I think we worked together for a good 6 months just in your region. But it showed me that you're a risk taker and that you're open to personal development, not just for yourself, but also for your team members. And I think that's why you are doing what you're doing now. You wanted to take new risks and new growth opportunities. And I'm kind of following your footsteps in many ways.
I love that. You know what's so funny is I literally don't remember that, but what I do remember is I would always look at new opportunities as new opportunity. And I'm a firm believer, specifically if you're leading a team, which I was and am, is that you always have to expose yourself to new things. And I think that's one of the great benefits of being an entrepreneur, is that I learn something new every day. Like, I'm constantly
That's
building
good.
neurons. And I think when we worked at Intuitive, you have one robot, they come out with new versions of it, but it was really one product. And so I think anything that can increase your relevance and also your skill set, I think you get riches in the niches. And so I always wanted to try to niche out and really build my acumen, and then make sure our team was exposed as well, because that's how you lead, is trying new things and not sitting
For
in
sure.
your ways. I literally don't remember that. That's so funny. What was it called? What
I
was the
do.
software called?
It was essentially the software to capture these, like we were using the CRM system to capture all these like case observations and proctoring events, all the
Okay.
dinner events.
Okay. Oh,
It's been
yes. Now I
remember that
remember.
like
Yes, yes, yes,
s
yes. It had a
s
name. Yes.
yeah, even I'm blanking on the name. It's been almost like a decade now, I
I
guess.
know, I feel like, yeah, I remember because I was actually a video testimony for it with Adam Clark.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. That's right.
Yes. Yes. So it managed our market development events.
Exactly. It was.
Yes. And it quantified the return on the investment. And each
That's
manager
right.
was supposed to put it through this portal. I can't remember the person at Intuitive who managed that. There was like a
Yeah.
female that managed it.
There were a group of people doing it, but
Yeah.
the software essentially brought automation. The
Yes.
software brought acceleration because sales leaders needed like approvals from their higher ups, and the software was automating getting
Yes.
those approvals.
Yes.
And maybe that was my calling. We're going to talk about Exin Health AI, and that's what
Yep.
we do, software
Yeah.
and automation.
Yeah. You know who it was? It was Claire Crabtree, right?
That's
Wasn't
true.
Didn't
That's
she
true.
oversee that with you?
She and many more people, definitely. There
Okay.
were many people doing a lot of manual work, and that was just not, a 21st century thing to
Yeah.
do anymore.
Yeah. That's amazing. All right. Well,
Uh,
I do want to talk about, just bring us up to speed on your leadership journey. Since this is a leadership podcast, I think it's always important to look at people's journeys, because if you're a medical device rep, or if you're even a rep, or someone that's not in leadership, and you wonder what that looks like to get to a point where you're where Hasan is now, and he's the founder of his own company, um, what's that journey look like, and what did it look like for you?
Sure, happy to explain. I think my journey has been relatively simpler compared to like many other people. Sometimes you look at a resume and you notice the person has worked for like 8, 10, 15 companies, and you're like, wow, that must be a lot of experience. And sometimes I envy those type of people who experience a lot of different companies. In mine, really, I had really two chapters up until now. One was almost a decade with Stryker's endoscopy division, and almost another 15 years with Intuitive Surgical. Um, and I consider myself really lucky because I think I worked for two amazing medical device companies
Mm-hmm.
that are out there. There are many, many out there, but I think these two were fantastic. I started at Stryker when I was at the age of 23, and
Mm,
I was given a lot of responsibilities. I started as an R&D engineer by education. I'm an electrical engineer, and I was given the lead job in designing the next generation minimal invasive surgical cameras and light sources, image capturing devices at the age of 23.
wow.
And Stryker, kudos to Stryker. They do that routinely. They find talented people and they give them a lot of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was able to design industry's first LED light source when I was at Stryker. We have several patents on that technology. What I learned at at Stryker, is that you got to hire for attitude,
Mm-hmm.
not for resume.
Completely agree.
We didn't have a lot of, Ivy League engineers around us,
Yeah.
but we were designing some phenomenal things because everyone was interviewed so carefully for the right attitude at Stryker. And to this day, Stryker, I think, still does a phenomenal job in that.
Yeah.
Um, I learned Stryker how to be responsible, how to collaborate with peers. Um, then um, then I moved to Intuitive Surgical, and Intuitive gave me a new chapter. And that what I learned at Intuitive is how to be a true professional.
Mhm.
I joined Intuitive, I think, at the age of almost 33, and it was my time to be more mature and
Mhm.
become more professional. And oh my God, I think Intuitive was just such the best fit at that time for me. We were surrounded by amazing leaders that you just want to emulate every
Yeah.
day. You
Yep.
simply cannot at that age, but you look at them, you're like, wow, this guy really walks the walk and talks the talk. And we were surrounded by such leaders, both you and I.
Mhm.
Um, I learned that as a business leader, you really need to have strong facts in your hand. You
Mhm.
got to rely on numbers. You cannot just go with your gut feeling or purely intuition. Of course, you need that, but
Mhm.
you got to be more methodical. um, and I remember Lonnie Smith at the time when I joined was the CEO of Intuitive, and then Gary Goodhart. They were very facts driven individuals, and they were really walking the walk and talking the talk at the same time. I remember Lonnie would often say, "Hey, guys, way leads to way. Like, get on the road. The road will bifurcate. The worst
Mhm.
you can do is not to get on the road, right? You got to initiate something, and then you will learn and you will grow."
Mhm.
And that really has been deeply instilled in me from my intuitive days. Um, and also, eh, one thing that at Intuitive, I think I personally developed a deeper sense is truly caring for the patients and your customers.
Completely agree with
I
you.
mean, I don't know if there's any other medical device company that lives there. I'm sure there are. Again, my sample size is very small, but gosh, I think a significant portion of Intuitive success is because Intuitive really deeply cares about the patients, the surgeons, and their the outcomes and the professional environment that the robots can create for the healthcare system.
Yeah, before we get into Exxon, that is such a profound statement and something I feel so strongly about. Let's talk about that really quick because I work with a ton of founders, technical founders and long-term founders of these startups and primarily, with goals of commercialization, and they have great innovations in multiple specialties and industries, but I think the one thing that has been so profound, I also was raised through the school of intuitive for half my career. And everything you just said was my exact experience. There
Mhm.
was no differences. But the thing that is so compelling and that I would love to put out a PSA to all medical device innovators, you have to focus on the patient. Like I have had a couple of clients recently where they focus on the provider, and that's great, to make the life of the provider better, but that's ultimately not what's going to make your brand stick. It's not going to get picked up by patients because if you're really just about the product itself, it's more a feature and benefit dump. And I think about it all the time. Intuitive, is plastered everywhere. Patients first always. And
Mhm.
having been a patient myself and also my entire family has been a patient, that I really 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 understand and believe that everything they do is about outcomes. Every single decision they make is about making it a better experience for the patient. And I would just say if you're in an innovation right now where it's just another mousetrap and you're not really looking at what will improve patient
Mhm.
outcomes, really reconcile that because one, it's probably not going to have a longevity factor assigned to it. But two, like, is that the right move? I think there's a ton of noise out there. There's a ton of products that you could innovate, but sometimes you have to question, should you? Or if the problem isn't big enough. That was the other big lesson I learned from Gary. It's
Mhm.
like patients first always, and always solve really big problems. And so if you're not solving the patient proposition and it's also not a big need or a big problem, do some reconciliation with that is all I would say, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I
Okay.
agree. I mean, I was in a lot of the headquarters roles at Intuitive, and I can tell you, I've I've lived through so many instances where we made decisions to intentionally delay a product because
Yep.
we felt like it's just not ready
Mhm.
for to be used on one of our loved ones.
Yeah.
And other companies, I think, would have said, okay, this is good enough. Let's just release it, right? Let's start getting some revenues and then we'll fix it along the way.
Mhm.
But Intuitive, I think we canceled a lot of projects. We canceled a lot of activities or delayed many activities because it wasn't just a right yet.
Yeah.
So, and it takes a certain leadership type to, to really put patients and
Restrain.
outcomes first. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, and we've had competitors, when we were both at Intuitive that took the shortcut route, and we know how those stories ended. So, yeah, I think, there's tons of lessons to be learned by the giants. There's tons of lessons to be learned by Stryker and multiple other big major corporations out there. So just take what, benefits you and move forward with it. Well, let's talk about, so you've got your history with Stryker, which I didn't know, by the way. Very diverse differences in culture between Stryker and Intuitive. I would
Very
say they're
different.
the exact inverse of each other culturally. I talk about Stryker a lot on this podcast for some reason. It's not intentional. I have former employees from Stryker. That's about as much as I know. I have a couple of friends that work at Stryker, but I've never worked there personally, but I do know a lot about their culture. And
A
I
great
didn't know you
company
came from
in
there.
different ways. It's a great
Yeah.
company, just different ways for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. Tell me, why we're now at this crossroads of Exin Health AI, and tell me what is, speaking of problems to solve, what is the problem to solve there? What are we doing with this company? And tell me more about it. I want to
Yeah,
know.
no, great. Thank you. Just like you, I also spent my entire career working with surgeons in the hospitals, in the ORs. I'm sure you've been in far more surgical cases than myself, but in all of those cases I've been, Stephanie, I've always noticed, and maybe this is my engineering side kicking in, I've always noticed there wasn't just enough advanced technology in the OR. Um, if a non-technical person looks at inside the OR, they might be impressed. They might like, oh wow, there's a lot of technology here. But when you are like an engineer, when you've seen so many different things, especially in the consumer space, and you understand how things work, we got to be honest. Like the technology in the ORs in the hospitals are not as advanced as in our consumer lives.
Mm-hmm.
And that always bugged me. I remember in one case, I was in Chicago working with a surgeon and we had to wait about 2 hours in between
Mm.
two cases.
Yeah.
The room just couldn't be turned over. The staff just couldn't get everything ready, devices and documentation and the patient workflow. And you barely see such inadequate workflows in other
In other
industries,
industries, you're right.
right?
Yeah.
And why are we content with that in healthcare? And I think part of the problem why we seem to be content is we just don't know what we don't know in
Mm-hmm.
healthcare. There's a lot of secrecy in data,
Mm-hmm.
the facts, the metrics, right? It's just not visible. So about 2.5 years ago, I was talking to a high school friend of mine. We've known each other for 30 plus years. He has a PhD from MIT in computer science. He got his PhD in AI space well before most of us ever heard the term AI.
Mm-hmm.
And he and I were talking, and we realized that between him and I, we could actually bring a lot of great advanced AI solutions to the OR space. And that triggered me to think about what I want to do, maybe like as a second or a third chapter of my professional life.
Mm-hmm.
And we quickly started Exin Health AI. What do? We do AI based. It's an AI companion for operating room nurses and the staff. It's called OR Genie, kind of like the genie in a
Mm-hmm.
bottle, but
Yep.
it's the OR Genie. And it's capable of doing some amazing things using AI. OR Genie uses both speech AI and vision AI to help the nurses complete their surgical documentation faster and far more accurately. Our goal is to, in fact, complete an intraoperative chart under 60 seconds, and we're
Whoa.
not that far from that. Um, And so we want to bring essentially efficiency and accuracy to the surgical documentation using AI. And the benefits potentially for the operating room environment is a nursing efficiency, that increased accuracy brings better revenue capture, that increased accuracy helps the centers better control their case costs, and it also really helps with having more accurate inventory management of their supplies and implants and medications.
Mm-hmm. Okay, got it. So, in your perspective, and I agree with you on turnover. And I didn't really ever think about it as like, why do we tolerate it in the operating room, but we don't tolerate it in other industries? If there's inefficiencies in other industries, it usually gets squeezed out, especially in the world and onset of AI. Everything is uber efficient now, almost too efficient, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we have the ability to do things that usually took hours. We can do it in 15 seconds now. So I think this is a great idea. And two, wanted to validate when you've looked at turnover specifically and the inefficiencies between cases, is it around documentation? Is that the major bottleneck?
Documentation is a component of that, and I use turnover situation that I experienced in Chicago as
Mm-hmm.
as an example to say like where technology could help. Um, but documentation essentially issues increase the healthcare cost by about 25%. There are
Okay.
different studies that looked at this. That 25% increased cost sometimes comes in the form of prolonged turnover times, but sometimes it's just the room throughput. There
Mm-hmm.
are certain cases in ASC environment, for example, that literally take 5 to 8 minutes per case. So the paperwork actually trails the actual operation.
Right.
So the physician is actually waiting for the nurse to finish the documentation so they can get the next patient in.
Okay.
In longer cases in hospitals, this is lesser of an issue. If you're doing a 3, 4, 5 hour case, there's always enough time. The other thing is, again, the average nurse, actually studies have shown this, the average nurse spends about 17% of his or her daily time in documentation. That's a
Okay.
significant amount of time.
Yeah.
And we all know that nurses don't become nurses or surgeons don't become surgeons to do paperwork, right? None of
Right.
us love paperwork.
Yeah.
So
No.
we hope that with
Salespeople
AI,
don't become salespeople to do paperwork either.
exactly.
You want to kill
I
a
mean,
salesperson, give them a bunch of paperwork.
that's right. Paperwork is it's a necessary evil, unfortunately, in our lives. We still
Yeah.
need to do it, but why not use AI to minimize the negative impact of that? And while you can increase also the accuracy of that documentation.
Yeah.
And that's our
Completely agree.
journey.
So I know you're still in stealth mode to a degree, but can you tell us a little bit about how it works? Only
Yeah,
share what
absolutely.
you're willing to share.
Absolutely. Yeah, we actually came out of that stealth mode about 2 months ago. We deployed our what we call a minimum viable product at
Mm-hmm.
our first customer site. It's an ambulatory surgery center here in Northern California. And the technology, the hardware side is very simple. It's actually an iPad and a set of Bluetooth earpieces, so
Mm-hmm.
the nurse can use one of these Bluetooth earpieces and can speak to the system, kind of
Mm-hmm.
like Siri, but far better than Siri. You
Right.
can engage with OR Genie as a nurse. It's a conversational AI companion.
Mm-hmm.
For example, you can speak to the system and say, "Hey, OR Genie, add to my chart that I just put this patient in supine position with arms tucked." And OR Genie is smart enough to know what's the context of that message, and it knows which boxes to go and check or which fields to fill in the chart. So the nurse, essentially hands-free, just speaks to our system.
Okay. So it's
Um,
integrated with the EHR, correct?
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. We integrate with the EHR systems. So, by the way, in ASCs, if you look at ASCs, half of the ASCs actually don't use any EHR
Yep.
system. They still do paper-based charting. So there's a lot of old style writing going
Mm-hmm.
on. So that's the kind of the speech part. The other cool thing about our product is if the nurse wants to add an implant, let's say in knee implant or some kind of a medication to the chart, in today's world, that nurse has to go into the chart, go to a menu. There's typically a pull down menu. You search for that implant, you add it, you save it. With our technology, the nurse literally needs to just snap a photo of that package, because all of these implants and meds, obviously, they have some
Mhm.
kind of a label on them,
Yep.
right? So using that iPad, she just takes a photo of it, and OR Genie does the rest. It automatically extracts all of the information from that label and inserts that into the exact place in the chart. Again, it's really hands-free. You don't have to verify it. It's literally 100% accurate. And we capture every detail on that label, from the product name, the size, expiration date, lot number, manufacturing. You capture all of that.
Wow.
With the manual method, no nurse would capture even half of that
Right.
information. So we
Yeah.
bring that accuracy and speed simultaneously.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud, but there's so many other implications that are favorable from this. It's not just time and efficiency and cost of their time. It's more about like risk avoidance too.
For sure.
Better documentation means that you're going to be able to back up anything that does or does not happen, and also be able to replicate it. If it's something that potentially led to a complication and you have documentation of it, you can really narrow in, this was the cause of that.
That's right.
So, gosh, that's cool. Now,
One of the
go ahead.
things we designed, I just want to highlight, one of the things we designed as a feature is when a implant or the disposable instrument is scanned,
Hmm.
um, the OR Genie instantly highlights if it is an expired item, because
Mm.
it also picks up the expiration date. So a big red flag comes up on the iPad saying, hey, this item is expired. I mean, think about it. OR is the last point that you can stop an expired item, because
Yep.
if the surgeon, and that's what we do with OR Genie. Of course, there are staff members who check whether something is expired, in the supplies room. But if something just essentially, unfortunately, passed through, you can still find that item, that expired item, in the OR with our technology.
And it will read the photo that the nurse is taking and say, this is an expired
That's
medical.
one of the many things that read. Yeah,
Wow. That is
exactly.
cool. Yeah, the more you're talking about this, I really feel like this should be in every OR, especially if it's commercially available. I do have questions because I just am
Please.
always wondering, questioning everything. So, have you thought about integrating this with supply chain to also, inform when things are getting swiped and used and tossed?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely, and that's a big problem in both hospital and ASC setting. There, especially in hospital, they have inventory management systems. These
Yep.
expensive software systems, but and in ASC, some of them have, some of them don't. But
Mhm.
essentially, those systems are only as good as the data that's coming in. If
Right.
the data is inaccurate, that inventory management system will never figure out what is the correct number of inventory. So with our system, we are actually looking into some partners these days to connect our accurate data to their engines, to
Mm,
their inventory management softwares, right?
yeah.
We don't see ourselves in the business of being an inventory management company. We see ourselves as a company that can provide super accurate data right at the point of care. And we
Yeah.
want to feed that accurate data to inventory management company softwares, to EMRs, to other places. So the entire healthcare system can function better with better, more accurate data.
Absolutely. And the other question I had that you'd mentioned, the example of it's similar to Siri. So is it always listening? Is it listening to things that may or may not be happening within that case? And is there value there that, maybe it's going to at some point prompt a nurse, hey, you haven't recorded wheels in, or you haven't
Exactly.
recorded, whatever. And maybe it's because it's AI, it's learning on itself, and it'll start to have its own formality of structure and then
For
start
sure.
to communicate, especially if they have Bluetooth in their ear, that you
That's right.
haven't done this, that, or the other. Is that part of the plan,
That's
or is
right.
that current
Absolutely.
day?
Yeah, we essentially, our AI engine is a generative AI in its
Mhm.
simplest form factor. So it learns from the nurse's practices. It learns from that. And it also, no wonder we call OR Genie an AI companion. It's a companion to a nurse. So if the nurse forgets to check a very important box or enter some important information, it actually speaks back to the nurse and say, hey, Nurse Stephanie, are you sure you don't want to add this? Or are you sure you want to skip this, right?
Yeah.
And also, even in some surgery centers, we're able to set up minimum acceptable thresholds for this documentation. And AI essentially will not let you close that chart unless you put that vital information. So what a great technology to really support, especially younger generation nurses who are just learning it on the job, right? Kind of like what we used to say at Intuitive, right? Dampening the learning curve for new surgeons.
Yep.
OR Genie is intended to dampen the learning curve for new nurses and new staff.
Yeah.
Hopefully, they'll get to the expert level in far less time because of OR Genie Companion.
Yeah, I mean, it's a co-pilot also, right? It's a companion, it's a genie. It can tell you things you may or may not know, or it might prompt you to look at things differently. But also, I think it's a co-pilot. It's someone that can
Exactly.
help manage the case with you. So that's cool.
Yeah.
That's really
no
cool.
surprise. I don't know if you use a Microsoft product, but Microsoft calls its AI product a co-pilot, right? Because it's it's a companion. It helps us with the Microsoft tools to use them better, faster, and more efficiently. And that's what we do in and out of the OR. By the way, our technology, we started inside the OR, but now we are actually releasing capabilities for pre-op and PACU environments because there's a significant amount of important documentation going on in those spaces as well.
Yeah. Random/critical question. Do you have to apply for FDA for this or no?
No.
Okay.
Our technology is a part of what's considered clinical documentation, and these documentation solutions, at least currently, are not 510K regulated.
Yeah.
But that might change down the road.
What a bonus for you, though.
That is true. That is true. That, as we were thinking about our product, we realized, oh, okay, we don't have to apply for 510K. That immediately, reduces your time to market dramatically.
Yes. I have another client that is in the sharps container business, and she had created an invention that basically makes the inserting needles into the container hands-free, so that you avoid any kind of dirty needle stick. And she also is in that same lane where she didn't need to go through the traditional process that most of my clients are going through, and it's somewhat painful to go through. So
that's right.
Yeah, that's great. Okay,
that's
so
right.
What's the future of Exin Health? Like, what's keeping you up at night, or what are you excited about?
Yeah, no, great. So we are in essentially a health tech domain. Literally, that's what they call us. Medtech is where more medical devices, the traditional medical devices. Biotech is more like biologics and drugs, and we are health tech, right? Which brings us closer to the IT side of things in many ways. So I think there are some interesting trends going on in the U.S. healthcare system. First of all, if we look at the technologies like ours, they have to be integrated to the existing EMR systems. That's when these systems perform the best, if they're integrated. On the hospital side, Epic is the Goliath in that space. Epic has 70, sometimes even some people claim 80% market share. So, which makes it very difficult in many ways to innovate on the hospital side, because you have to kind of go through Epic to be widely used. And then on the ASC side, there are a couple companies like HSC Pathways and SIS that are the leading EMR companies, but there are many, many more EMR companies. It's very fragmented environment on the ASC side. What really we're following closely is how can we integrate to the right EMR systems, because it takes a certain amount of engineering work, collaboration with these companies, and we realize that doing that as a startup for us at the hospital market is going to be very difficult. So we decided to focus on the ASCs, at least for now.
Yeah.
And we are talking to some of those leading EMR companies on the ASC side to see how we can quickly integrate. What's the value we can provide to them, and vice versa. The
I
other
would
really
think
interesting.
just overall adoption of electronic medical records would be the advantage for any of those manufacturers because there's such a low compliance. Unless it's enforced by the hospital or the ASC, you know, people are lazy when it comes to documentation. And I would think if you can
That's
make
right.
it as easy as possible, that can only help downstream, right?
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. And I think that's what we're seeing. And another good news about our industry is AI medical scribes over the last 5 years have gained tremendous popularity.
Hmm.
By the way, this AI medical scribe market didn't even exist, I would say, up until 6, 7 years ago.
Hmm.
But with the advancements in AI, now the physician and patient dialogue in the physician office can easily be scribed by AI. And those companies do a phenomenal job. And thanks to them, hospital leaders are now appreciating AI more. They finally have one great example of how AI technology can improve efficiencies, productivity in the hospitals. And so we at Exin Health AI, we're kind of going to follow their footsteps in bringing another great AI solution in increasing productivity. What we do is not an AI medical scribe. It's far more than that, very different. But we appreciate those companies bringing a very successful AI solution because healthcare system needs those early successes in order to adopt new technologies.
Yeah, speaking of new technology, is your current solution, is this considered disruptive? Is there anything that's a me too or competitor to you, or is it more tangential competitors, meaning there's not a head to head direct competitor, maybe there's an indirect competitor?
Yeah, it is the latter right now. We are not aware of any immediate direct competitor, but with anything related to software, markets change and move
Yeah,
very rapidly. So we could have competition, direct competition anytime. But it doesn't matter for us because with our technology, we developed a lot of proprietary models, especially on the vision side. And any company that wants to come into the space will have to develop that. They have to have those technical capabilities. We already have a couple of patents also on the things that we do that gives us strength. And look, at the end of the day, it's all about, again, solving real problems.
right.
And I believe that, really great products come from genuine frustration.
Yep.
And, me being in the surgery space in the ORs for so many years, I've noticed that there's genuine frustration amongst the nurses and surgeons when it comes to documentation. I hope companies like us will solve it, and I'm very confident that such solutions are very much needed.
Absolutely. So, just changing gears slightly, but a little bit on the topic of AI, obviously, as consumer audiences, we're starting to witness what I call the snowball effect of AI. I think it's outpacing the growth in which it was originally expected. It's
For sure.
learning faster than we can keep up. And just when you think there's an AI solution, then there's another AI solution. And they're almost like snowballing down the road in the consumer lane. And so, and I'm sure you're in the same boat. I use AI all day long for just everything,
Hmm.
that I can from an operational perspective to make my life faster and easier. So,
Absolutely.
how do you think? I'm just kind of thinking about this. How is this going to affect biotech, health tech, med tech? It has to have a compounding effect on our industry, the one that we've all been so comfortable and lived in for years. I think that AI whole concept of machine learning, which I know is not new to our industry, but I definitely think we're in a different place now, right? And everything, I mean, I know they're, trying to turn it on to pharmaceutical companies to cure cancer and things that
Sure.
none of us had the intellect to do. We're now being armed with the information that we need and that's been sorely lacking to innovate even more at a higher demand and a higher level than what we could do on our own. Don't you think that that's going to significantly change the landscape of innovation coming out?
Big time, big time. And it's doing, and it will continue to do this at an unprecedented rate.
Yeah.
Um, it- uh, the 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 level of innovation AI is bringing has been far more significant than any other technology that really mankind has ever invented.
Yep.
Some even say that it's even more important than the invention of electricity.
I
Um,
agree.
Definitely far more important than the invention of internet in the late 90s, early 2000s. And look, you look at it with AI now, drug delivery, drug development cycles are shrinking rapidly.
Yeah.
Those rare diseases are going to have cures for them that mankind couldn't figure out for, for decades.
Yep.
And even FDA is using AI to do its job, right? So it's a solution for everybody, not just for one party, but I think it's a great thing to be in our lives. In medical devices, I think the devices are going to get smarter, faster, but I hope at the end, the healthcare as a whole becomes cheaper and far more accessible because of
Yeah.
AI. Because otherwise, if things are still as expensive or unreachable as they are, that would be unfortunate, So hopefully these efficiency savings are shared by the society as a whole.
Yeah.
Um, I've seen some estimates where, like, just in the U.S. healthcare market, um, there's more than $1 trillion of waste in the U.S. healthcare market. I mean,
Mm.
that's a huge amount of money because of, again, lesser productivity, people doing the repetitive tasks again manually
Hmm.
because they don't use AI, or misdiagnosis, or two different health facilities not communicating with one another. I think we got to bring more AI to healthcare and more interconnectivity.
Yep.
And I think there's a big responsibility there to EMR companies to play a little bit more open books. I think they're going to be better companies. They're going to make more revenues if they play openly. I mean, look at USB technology or Bluetooth,
Hmm.
right? Do you ever think when you buy a USB device or a Bluetooth that it will not work? It always works, right?
Yeah.
Because the smart minds have come together and create standardization. And because how well they standardize USBs and Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, everybody sells more of those gadgets,
Yep.
right? So I think the rising tide really lift up all the boats. And I hope to see this in healthcare with more AI and more open interconnectivity between different systems.
Yes. Last thing on AI that, does technically keep me up at night, not so much around the medical device industry, but just in general, but I do think it could apply to medical device. Actually, my last guest from a company that also is using a little bit of a degree of AI. I think most medical innovations have some level of AI at this point. But the two things that still stand out to me that have not been solved within AI, whether it's medical device, business to business, or business to consumer, is guardrails on confidentiality, and then also hallucination. So I know those are things that all of the leaders of OpenAI sources and LLMs are working on, but I still think it's there. And my last guest had mentioned you can't really have hallucination in medical device. You just can't. You can't make things up if you don't know the answer. And that is still prevalent in some of these LLM systems. And I know they're actively working on making sure they're not making up stuff. And also, we have to figure out how to govern this information. Those are things that I do care about. And I even, hesitate putting my own company information in because I don't feel like it's a little bit like the wild, wild west right now. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you're right. Look, I think hallucinations is a real risk,
Hmm.
um, and I would say that as a technologist, I would say 90% of hallucinations will have to be addressed by the larger providers of these large language models,
Yep.
because building your own language model is no longer attainable for
Yeah.
anybody. Just,
Right.
3 to 4 or 5 companies will do it, and I think that's where the governments have to kind of step in and regulate and guide these companies to solve these problems.
Yeah.
And there's a great incentive for these companies also to solve hallucination problems or minimize or completely eradicate it. I mean,
Yeah.
they will do it even if the government doesn't step in. Um, and then the companies who are building products with I call them the application layer companies like
Mm-hmm.
us, right?
Mm-hmm.
We take the base models and we train them a little bit more, customize them a little bit more, and we put them into a certain use case.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the remaining 10% responsibility to make sure that privacy is maintained, and accuracy is maintained. And there are, again, wonderful um, regulating bodies, and IT kind of approval houses like SOC 2 compliance, for example. There are companies where you got to show your software and how it works, and these independent bodies review your code and make sure that it is safe, it complies with privacy regulations. So I feel very positive about where the industry is going. I
Yeah.
think there are plenty of safeguards, and they're just going to have to evolve over time, of
Right.
course.
Yeah. It's things that didn't exist prior to the
Sure,
onset of AI. So there weren't concerns out there. But yeah, I think, there's probably going to be a regulatory body at some point overseeing these large language models. Well, anyway, we could go on and on about AI to the end of time. It's actually, I personally feel blessed that we are living in this time. Like, we got to see the onset of the internet and also the onset of AI. And probably in our lifetime, or maybe our grandchildren's lifetime, there'll be family members that are robotic or that are, agentic.
for sure,
And I really do believe that. I don't think we're that far away from this being a part of our population. So
for sure, for sure.
I think the faster you can kind of get on board and stay ahead of it, the better you are. Anyway,
I think some of the things we've seen in sci-fi movies will definitely become reality and will be a part
right?
of our lives.
I agree. I feel like I'm living a sci-fi movie on a daily basis in the
For sure, for sure.
current life. Okay. Well, I can't let you go without asking you the three questions that I ask every guest on Leader Podcast. So, and in no particular order, you can answer them any way you want, but it's a speed round. So it's, who's a mentor that's been a big part of your life that you would like to pay it forward to? A business book, or even a book. I've had people pick Harry Potter books, but a book that's made an impact on you, and why. And then also, and everyone says they don't have one, but everyone does. So I'm going to force the answer, your superpower. I think those are all things that are fun to talk about, but also I'm always interested in people's responses.
Great, great question. So I think in terms of mentors, I had many mentors, like everybody did. But the two people really left a deep, profound impact on me, both from actually, the first one is Eric Davidson, with
Mm,
whom I worked both at Stryker and Intuitive. Actually,
okay.
he's the guy who hired me into Intuitive as my first manager. I've
Mm-hmm.
always emulated the way that he conducts his business,
Mm-hmm.
and to this day he's still one of my advisors in my startup, and we regularly chat, and he's doing wonderful things. And the second mentor that really also left a lasting impression on me has been Glenn Bavoso, my
Mm,
most recent leader at Intuitive. And I try to emulate both of these gentlemen every day. In terms of the book, it's a book by Tony Fadell called Build. It's a book written by a technologist for technologists. And actually, there's a short funny story that I want to just explain. I didn't know about this book until the very last moment I was leaving Intuitive Surgical. Literally, I on that day, I think it was like 10 a.m. in the morning at Intuitive's parking lot. I already left my badge at the front desk. I was just walking out, and I was hoping to see Dave Rosa
mm-hmm.
before I left, and he was in a meeting. So I just left a note with his assistant saying, "Hey, Dave, just want to say thank you. I'm leaving. I'll call you later." And then I left the building. I was in the parking lot, and then somebody was running behind me. And I turned around. It was Dave Rosa, who is now the CEO of Intuitive. And we had a wonderful, 5-minute chat there. He wished me good luck, and he asked me what I was going to do, and I told him about the startup idea. And he said, "Hey, Hassan, you got to read this book."
Mm-hmm.
And I read that book, and it really changed my perspective on how I should think about startup in technology space. And what a wonderful last second gift that he gave to me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm so proud that and so humbled that he came and found me before I left in the parking lot. And it again shows what a humble person
Yes.
he is and all the other leaders that we had at Intuitive. So
Absolutely.
that's the
Yeah.
book that I highly recommend. It's called Build by Tony Fadell. And superpowers, like I don't think I have any superpowers, but if I wished I had a superpower, I wish I could function without the need to sleep. Because if I
It's
could
like Donald
function
Trump.
without sleeping, yeah, that would add. If you think about it, the average person would get about 27 to 30 years of life if you
Yeah.
don't sleep.
Yeah.
That would be huge.
Yeah.
You could do a lot of fun things. I mean, some could work more, some could have a
Hmm.
lot more fun, but I wish my body would never need sleep. That would be an amazing power.
Well, the longevity gurus would tell you not getting sleep will actually take years off your life, not add. But I see what you're saying. You could use the time that you were sleeping to
Yeah.
add time to your life. Yes, I got you on that.
Imagine my
Yes.
cells never needed a break, never needed replenishment. Like that
Yes.
would be amazing.
Yes. So, since you didn't technically answer my superpower, I'm going to give you a superpower because I've known you a long time. And by the way, I know all the people you just referenced. They're all amazing, incredible people. I love Glenn, Dave, Eric. They're all amazing. So you have a great stable of people in your life that you'll continue to lean on as you build this company. But the superpower that stands out to me, and I don't take it lightly because not everyone has this superpower, but you're such a kind person. And I feel like you're
Mhm.
always smiling. I don't think I've ever seen you angry. And now, granted, I never directly worked for you. So maybe that, changes depending on your role, but just a kind, disarming person. And, you dealt with a lot of very difficult personalities externally from our old company. And I know because I saw you navigate those relationships and they were tough, and I think just your overall charm and genuinely are inquisitive to others and openly and actively listen to them. And I do think that's a huge superpower that is lost on a ton of people, myself included. So I think that is something that is really unique to you. And it's also a huge superpower, and continue to be who you are because it's so contagious. Everyone wants to engage with you because you're just a cool person, right?
Thank
But
you. I
I do
appreciate
think
that.
it's an art also. I do think, you're obviously able to speak at many levels, but also to many different types of people. And that's a huge superpower of yours.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I hope my wife will hear this because she often complains about my inquisitiveness and my desire to talk to people. Like
Yeah.
anywhere I go, like grocery
Yep.
store, anywhere, like I will start a conversation with some stranger.
Yeah.
And my wife was like, could you not talk to somebody just in one instance? Like, do you have to talk to people? Could we just move on? I love talking to people and I love listening to their stories. I find it fascinating to hear what's happening in other people's lives. I learn from it. I just have fun listening to it. So
I
thank you so much
agree.
for recognizing
Yeah,
that.
of course. Yeah. And I think, just in this world where there's sometimes noise, sometimes some darkness, I do think, the world's full of kind people. If you're not one, find one. And I think you are one. And I think that's just going to be huge for your company. I did an episode recently about technical founders and how they can
Mhm.
evolve into commercial founders. But sometimes those, technical engineering physician types can build the prototype, but they can't stay on to lead the people. And sometimes you
That's
have to
right.
hire a visionary CEO. I definitely think you're one of those chameleons that could do both. You've got
I
the
hope
technical
so. Thank
background, but
you.
you've also got the visionary and leadership background to take it all the way. So,
Thank you. One of the things that also resonates with me is one of my mentors used to tell me, "Hey, you got to surround yourself with people that are better than you, right?
absolutely.
In the directions that you are not strong." And that has been a huge North Star for me. Um, when you're a startup, of course, it's hard to hire a lot of people,
Mhm.
because great people you got to pay a lot of money, but when the day comes, definitely I will execute that even more profoundly. And life is better when you are surrounded by people who are better than you in different directions. It's not good versus bad. It's just different, right? We need
Yep.
different skills around us.
Absolutely.
And over the years, I appreciated that a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we could go on and on about this topic. I feel like we're both kind of philosophical, deep type people. And I love having those kind of conversations. I wish I had a whole other podcast that I could just go down my philosophical paths all day long, but
Let's do it. Let's do it.
So anyway, well, Hasan, thank you so much for being a part of
Thank you.
Leadr Podcast today. And it's super exciting to see yet another former colleague of mine. There's a ton of innovators coming out of Intuitive Surgical. So they must have done something right with all of us. You know, we've learned a ton, but also have the ability to really add value and, you know, kind of emulate and model what we've learned. So
That's right.
I have huge hopes for you and your company, and I'll continue to stay connected. But again, thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. It's fun to see you again and chat with you.
Absolutely. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Leadr Podcast. If you enjoyed our conversation, please take a moment to subscribe, share, and leave a comment so more listeners can find us. Interested in sharing your own story on Leadr Podcast or looking to elevate your brand and marketing efforts with Tribe Agency? Visit us at tribeagency.org/contact to get in touch. We value your engagement and look forward to growing with you. Don't forget to follow Leadr Podcast for more inspiring episodes like this. Thanks again and see you next time.